I don't know that we've had major movement at the top, but we've definitely had at least one player who is very much supplanting his name in the conversation at the top. I think he's probably the most talked about player right now. I don't know if you want to call him the biggest riser or whatever. So I think that's a good way to preface it with the conversation around the top of the draft and the draft in general. These teams that are at the bottom that probably aren't going to end up there, and then the teams that are there for sure.
Okay, so with this draft, I think we probably underestimate. Like you're talking about Egor Demin, right?
Yeah.
Or Egor Demin, I believe is how BYU might be pronouncing it now.
I wrote it down the last game I watched. Where is Egor Demin?
Okay, so I've gotten different things then.
Yeah,
because I've been told BYU is pronouncing it Egor Demin. It's definitely Egor. I know that.
Egor, yeah.
Demin. I've now heard two separate things on this, and I'm a little bit confused. Okay. Cooper is very clearly still the name on everybody's mind. We need to be transparent with that. Like, yes. That is 1,000% it. Cooper very much to me looks like a potential number 1 overall pick. I do not think that Cooper is in the class of like Victor Wembanyama at this point yet, but I think Cooper looks like a solid potential number 1 overall pick. I am excited to watch him continue to play at Duke this year. He is 17 years old. He's creating shots, as we saw in that Kentucky game, at a super high level. We haven't really even talked about the Kentucky game yet, you and I. What did you think of that when you watched Cooper Flagg?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting with him. You see how impactful he is on the defensive end, right? Like that's the thing that always stands out. The weak side rim protection is silly. I think I still want to be like, I still want to see what he can do with the ball in his hands. Like, can he be a primary scoring option? I know he took a lot of those shots and he did a lot of that in that game, but he ended up 9 of 19 and 1 of 5 from 3, 2 assists to 3 turnovers. The shooting percentages aren't great right now. And so if we're like, I'm with you, he's still the number 1 pick. He is very physical on his drives. He was attacking Kentucky out of straight isolations in that game. I just kind of want to see at what level that can be. Do you draft him thinking he's your number 1 scoring option, or is he just like this unbelievable versatile piece that maybe fits in better as your number 2 scoring option, even though he does everything else at such a high level?
If I told you that he is similar to a better defensive Franz Wagner, and I think Franz Wagner is excellent on defense, as I think people know, I think that's where I'm kind of settling on Cooper right now. And look, I Wagner is on a streak right now where I think he has 30 points in each of his last like 5 games and has been unbelievable since Paulo went out. By the way, hey, I did a video on that. You guys can go watch the Franz Wagner breakdown video I did. It's a fantastic little run of games where he's been able to really string together some incredible offense. I think Orlando's offense looks a little bit more movement based with Paulo out, not quite as centric on hunting mismatches as what it has been previously. But Franz looks unbelievable right now. So when I say that, like I say that I think Franz is going to be a 5-time All-Star in the NBA or something like that. Like I think this dude's going to be a stud. I think that's where I am on offense. And if you kind of added some, defensive upside with Cooper, that's a really good player. That's definitely worth a number 1 overall pick to me, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I think with him, he's number 1. I still kind of want to see the full Ace Bailey experience to see how much of a run he can make at it, because I just think Ace is the exact archetype of player that NBA teams would looking for. We've gotten 1 game against Monmouth, and I'll be honest, I haven't even watched that one. I'm kind of, some of the frustrations for me early in the season, some of these teams just aren't playing quality competition where I feel like I can get great evaluations. Now some have, but a lot have not. And so I'm kind of waiting for those games to happen where I feel like I can really get a better evaluation. But yeah, I mean, he's been really good. What I do like is it seems like he's going to play with the ball in hand a lot at Duke. So we're going to get to find out and kind of see that growth from him throughout this season. because Tyrese is pretty much playing off the ball. So he's going to get to play on ball a lot. Foster's essentially their point guard, right?
It's so weird watching them, because I thought that what they did in the preseason and in their first couple games was so drastically different than what they did against Kentucky. Like they ran like a ton of sets against Maine and against Arizona State in the preseason. And then in this game against Kentucky, like, I don't know if they just decided we love the Andrew Carr Cooper Flagg matchup, or if they just decided, or if like Shire like kind of shit the bed. Like I don't know what happened, but they got away from what they were doing in the preseason. It looked totally different structurally to me. So I genuinely am not sure what we're going to see on a night to night basis now. The Kentucky game has like completely thrown me for a loop on like what their offense is going to look like. Cause I had a vision based off of what we'd seen before, and we'd seen it against a high major team as well as mid-major teams. And then we saw it against Kentucky, and it just looked so different that it's hard for me to gauge now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It will be, that was, like you say, it was the first game against a high leverage opponent like that. And so maybe they just got really locked into, they thought this was a major advantage for them, having Cooper attack Carr, and they just kind of weren't able to adjust or change their mindset once they got into the game.
Yeah. Okay. So the next group of guys I want to talk about: Ace Bailey, Egor Demin. Let's throw Dylan Harper in here. We'll throw VJ Edgecombe in here. We can throw Kasparis in here. We can throw Traore in. Who do you like best of that group? Because I have an answer, and I don't know if it's the popular answer right now.
Yeah, I'm still on Ace Bailey. I mean, again, we've only gotten a 1-game sample for him. We'll see. This may change. I don't know, but he scored 17 in that game. I don't want to take a whole lot from it. That's just, before the season started, that's who I had right there with Cooper. I don't know that any of these other guys have done enough to get there. Egor is like playing really well. I'm always a little bit slow to move guys. That's kind of my thing with draft stuff. So maybe I'm going to be slow to move him all the way up there, but I would still go with Ace right now.
I generally also am slow on this stuff, mostly because I don't like to make big moves until teams play like real teams.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Here's the thing. What we have seen from Egor,
he's been good,
really good, is so different from what we had seen previously from him at Real. The shooting is different. I think that like a lot of the shooting stuff has now opened up his game in a substantial way, to where teams feel like they have to guard him far away from the rim. And that allows him, with his size, to be able to like drive and get to the basket a little bit easier. The big thing for me is just like, we're getting so much more of an opportunity to see him process the game quickly. I always felt like at Real, when he had the ball, it was like him and Hugo Gonzalez kind of going back and forth, that I thought he had a tendency some of the time to dribble the air out of the ball. And at BYU, there are times where he does that. Like, I don't mean to say that like he doesn't do that, but I think that by and large, the processing speed when it has to be there is just quicker than all of these dudes. And that includes Cooper. I am very in on what I have seen on the ball from Egor at this point. It all is going to come down to what he looks like as a scorer in Big 12 play. I don't know the answer to that yet, to be honest with you. Yeah, it might be great. I'm not saying that like I don't know that it's going to be bad. It could be great. It could be, just so in terms of efficiency. I'm not sure yet. But the passing, the playment, like all of that stuff is so high level that I'm just taking the bet on that dude.
That's fair. And in the same way that like I'm not willing to completely sell on VJ Edgecombe because he's shooting 34% from the field and 15% from 3 in 3 games, I want to see how the shooting numbers for Egor, it's 23 point attempts and it's been not good competition, but that's still 23 point attempts and he's made 11 of the 20. So that will be interesting. He is 5 of 10 from the free throw line, but the processing, the passing, all of that is really good. Competition hasn't been great. He plays Ole Miss in 11 days and then Providence 4 or 5 days after that. So we'll get a chance even before Big 12 play to see. Then they don't play, really anybody, Wyoming, Fresno State. So there's some games coming up, and then we get into Big 12 play, and we'll really be able to evaluate his game. So listen, I have him up right there in my next tier of guys, just like you, I guess. It sounds like you probably have him a little bit higher than me, but he's very much in that conversation, and he proves it against high level competition, the first couple of Big 12 games or whatever. Then he has a real case potentially to be number 2, depending on what Ace Bailey does.
My Dewar jeans are truly my favorite piece of clothing that I own right now. They sent me out a pair of jeans and they are fantastic. I've been wearing these things everywhere that I can whenever I go out of the house. They are so comfortable. They look great. They feel great. They're stylish. They're versatile. You can wear them in a lot of different situations. They are fantastic, fantastic jeans. Dewar is built for doing, with styles of stretch performance denim and lifestyle apparel for everyone in every season. Dewar has you covered for the colder winter months with fabrics like a fireside denim, which is interwoven with fleece for warmth without too much bulk. Plus, Dewar's clothes are sustainably crafted to last. They're going to be a staple in my closet for years. I am going to try and get them to send me more clothes out, in all honesty, because they have been so, so, so good. I love my Dewars, and I'm sure you will too. Check out Dewar's flagship stores in LA or Denver, or shop online at shopdewar.com/game theory. That's shopdeuer.com/game theory. Right now, my listeners are going to get 20% off your first purchase when you use that exclusive URL. Don't wait. Get 20% off at shopdeuer.com/game theory. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for any net worth for just $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific product disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Ace has been interesting. Like, I did a whole breakdown on Ace's preseason game against St. John's. You can go watch that if you're curious where my, thoughts are on Ace. He's a intensely interesting player that is also extremely young, like just turned 18, I think in like August or so.
End of August or middle of August, excuse me.
Like really, really young. I think that, he's only what, like 4 or 5 months younger or older than Cooper, and Cooper gets thrown into this boat of being so young and everything like that because he's still 17.
That's a good point.
Ace is also extremely young for this class, and some of the shot making that he showcases is incredibly impressive. It is like unbelievably impressive. Some of the decision making, the looseness with the ball concerns me, like in a real way. I will say I've seen the name Jabari Smith come up with him a couple of times from people online. He's so much more fluid athletically than what Jabari was, even at Auburn. And this comes from somebody that, like, I liked Jabari at Auburn and think that he's still going to be like a really solid NBA player. It's just like the difference athletically in terms of explosiveness, in terms of his just fluidity with the ball. It's just nowhere like remotely close. It's the Michael Porter Jr. name that has come up. That one I think is a little bit more applicable, to be honest. Like, that is one that, okay, like I can see that. He needs to be able to create going forward with the ball to break out of that Michael Porter Jr. thing. Grape Ape brings up Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller is an interesting comparison as well. And Brandon was older. I think Brandon was almost a year and a half older than what Ace is this season. And that, I mean that at his Alabama freshman year. I think he was a year and a half older than what Ace is now at Rutgers. The difference for me is that Brandon played with real flexibility and bend and had the ability to string out ball handlers and be able to, even though he didn't regularly get to the basket, get there a little bit more often, despite being as skinny as he was. I don't know. Like I'm truly fascinated with Ace. I want to keep watching him. I think he has an immense amount of potential, but there's some things to kind of work with here.
No, again, 100%. I'm with you. Like my evaluation of him is still pretty much based off what we saw pre-college season, where I was very high just on the archetype. And, as you mentioned, Brandon Miller, I remember watching Brandon Miller and not really seeing the vision and not appreciating some things he was doing enough. And I didn't want to make the same mistake with Ace, at least until I saw him in college. And that's why I felt very comfortable having him in the top 2 of my personal rankings. I will also say I watched a Rutgers game for Dylan Harper when Ace was still out, and he was very engaged on the bench. Start of the season, he's out with an injury. He's over there communicating and talking. Listen, I'm sure the intel will come out at some point. I have no idea what it is, but whenever I see an injured player as a freshman engaged the way he was, that stood out to me in a very positive way.
Oh, the Dylan, I can tell you, the Dylan intel's awesome.
No, I was talking about Ace. Yeah. Ace was on the bench. Ace was on the bench, injured, and was still engaged and cheering on his teammates and communicating. He was like calling out an action from the other team in a game where he wasn't suited up because of the injury, and I found that to be noteworthy and impressive.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to see him be more aware of those actions when he's on the court himself.
Sure, fair.
Being honest.
Yeah.
But look, he's young, and hopefully those games, this is moments where like those games on the bench can sometimes help you recalibrate and see things a little bit differently. So maybe it could help him. Yeah. VJ to me, I said in the preseason, I think he's like a super athlete version of like a Gary Harris, Cason Wallace type. And so far the shot isn't falling. I'm not as worried about the shot off the catch. I think he'll probably shoot at some point. If you look at the percentages at Lehigh, it was always really, really high. I'm not that worried about VJ at this point, but I've never been quite as like, oh my God, this is the dude, as some people were. And then Dylan, like, I really like Dylan as a player. I do worry just a little bit about the lack of explosiveness. I think that has popped up already on the tape in a way that is concerning.
I will say with VJ, I've watched some games. Lots of times I don't watch live. I grab them after the fact. And so like I go into a game knowing he didn't score the ball well. And I'm like, okay, like, is this the game where I really drop him? And I watch him miss shots and I think the jumper looks fluid. And then I watch him make a ton of impactful plays in other areas of the game. And I'm just like, I still think this is a really good basketball player. Now, if we're 5, 8, 10 games in and he still can't make a shot and he's shooting poor, then some things have to adjust. And I have the same concern with Dylan Harper for what it's worth. Like even going back to high school is a little bit like, okay, does he have that athleticism and that juice athletically to create it the way he needs to and those type of things.
And then the other guy I am going to throw just into this mix very quickly is Kasparas Yakashonas. I know he's only averaging 9 points to this point, but he's also averaging 8 assists and 6 rebounds per game. He is just like orchestrating everything right now for Illinois. They play Alabama, I think, in a couple of days here. And that's a game where I'm just like so interested because that Alabama team seems kind of funky right now with everything, they're going through trying to figure out their rotations. They lost to Purdue over the weekend, which was a little bit surprising to me. But yeah, look, I'm very interested to see what Yakashonas does. He had 13 assists against SIU Edwardsville. He had 11, 7, and 5 against Eastern Illinois in 25 minutes. He is a guy that I'm really, really excited to watch as well. But again, I think he's probably more like combo guard. He can handle on-ball stuff next to a star as opposed to like a star. I think there are a lot of really, really good players in this draft. I don't know that there is like a really superstar talent that I've seen quite yet in the same way that we knew that like Victor was a superstar when he was coming through.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you can go down the list of the guys we've talked about, and not many of those guys would you feel like really have primary offensive scoring option on your team.
Here's a fun question.
Yep.
would you have any of these guys ranked ahead of Cade as a prospect right now?
So that's what I was trying to think earlier with Cooper.
I think I would have Cooper ahead, but I don't know if I would have anybody else ahead. Right now, like specifically right now, I mean.
Knowing what we know about Cade right now, you would take Cooper over Cade? Like if you were the Detroit Pistons, you would trade Cade for the number 1 pick?
Sorry, no, I was referring to everybody else that is, going through this draft versus Cade as the prospect.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I wasn't heavy enough into it. I was very high on Cade. I would have to.
As was I.
I would have to think about that a little bit more, because I thought Cade had primary run your offense upside. I'm still not sure I'm quite there with Cooper, even though there's no question I think that Cooper is going to be more impactful defensively. It's interesting. Plus Cooper's more athletic. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to talk about. Okay. So let's get into our power tankings idea here.
Okay.
The draft, we're excited about this 2025 draft. I think you and I might be like, okay, let me speak for myself here. I am a touch lower on the upside of this class than what I think some people are.
So
I guess is where I would say I sit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just mentioned that, how many of these guys would you say you really project to be the number 1 scoring? Obviously somebody will, but who do you really pick out? The one thing I'll say about my board right now is I feel like I've watched almost every one of these guys at least once, if not a couple times. I feel pretty good about the group of guys we just said and a few more names in the lottery. I'm struggling to find guys to fill out the middle of the first round right now. There's some guys I'm just like, okay, is it real? Is it not? Who can be there and kind of fill out? So I guess my point was I know there's a lot of season left, but there's a lot of movement that's going to happen, I think, in the mid to the end of the first round. There's a lot of guys, I guess, a lot of opportunity for guys to find themselves middle of the first round, into the first round with consistent seasons. Or, playing better after slow starts, whatever boat they find themselves in.
I don't disagree with you on that, if I'm being honest.